During a lively classroom discussion, a teacher was exploring the various occupations held by the parents of her students. She found that understanding her students' family backgrounds helped her connect with them on a more personal level. As the conversation progressed, the teacher finally turned to little Johnny, who had been eagerly waiting for his turn to share. She asked, "Johnny, what line of work is your father in?" With a beaming smile, little Johnny replied, "Oh, my dad's a professional magician." The teacher's eyes lit up with fascination. "That's quite interesting. What would you say is his most impressive trick?" Little Johnny thought for a moment before answering. "Well, his absolute best trick, the one that always amazes people, is sawing individuals in half. It's truly mind-blowing." The teacher, clearly delighted by the unique occupation, responded, "How wonderful, Johnny! I'm sure your father's performances are quite the spectacle." Curious about the impact of such a profession on little Johnny's family, the teacher continued, "Tell me, Johnny, do you have any siblings?" Little Johnny nodded earnestly and said, "Yes, madam, I sure do. I have one half-brother and two half-sisters." A brunette, a redhead, and a blonde find themselves stranded together on the edge of a towering cliff, with no apparent way down. As they peer over the precipice, considering their options, a radiant angel suddenly appears before them. The angel, in a gentle, soothing voice, instructs the three women to take a leap of faith off the cliff. However, they must also shout aloud what they wish to land on safely as they descend. The women exchange uncertain glances but decide to trust the heavenly being's advice. The brunette bravely volunteers to go first. She takes a deep breath, steps towards the edge, and then leaps into the void, yelling, "Pillows!" Miraculously, she lands on an enormous, fluffy pile of pillows at the bottom, completely unarmed. The redhead, encouraged by the brunette's safe landing, decides to take her turn. She steps up to the edge, jumps with all her might and shouts, "Feathers!" To her amazement, she lands on soft, cushiony mass of feathers at the bottom of the cliff. Finally, it's the blonde's turn. She hesitates for a moment, gathering her courage, and then approaches the edge of the cliff. Just as she is about to take the leap, she stumbles over a small rock, causing her to lose her balance and tumble over the edge involuntarily. As she plummets down, her eyes widen in panic and she screams, "Shit!" A rugged cowboy strolls into a bar, taking a break from his day-to-day ranch duties. He saddles up to the counter and orders himself a stiff drink. As he sits there, savoring every drop of his whiskey, a young lady enters the bar and takes a seat next to him. She casually glances at the cowboy, taking in his weathered appearance, and finally decides to strike up a conversation. She asks, "Excuse me, but are you a real cowboy?" The cowboy pauses, reflecting on his life's work, and replies, "Well, I've spent my entire existence out on the ranch, wrangling horses, repairing broken fences, and branding cattle under the hot sun, so I suppose I am a genuine cowboy." The young lady seems intrigued and decides to share a personal detail about herself. "You know, I'm a lesbian. My days are consumed by thoughts of women from the moment I wake up in the morning until I lay down at night. Women are always on my mind. Whether I'm showering, watching TV, or simply going about my daily routine, everything I do somehow leads me to think about women." The cowboy listens attentively, nodding as she speaks. They continue to chat amiably, exchanging stories about their lives and experiences. A short time later, an enthusiastic couple enters the bar. Anne takes a seat next to the cowboy. They seem to be tourists, eager to engage with a real-life cowboy. They lean over and ask, "Are you an authentic cowboy?" He replies, "I always thought I was, but just found out that I'm a lesbian." A newlywed couple was enjoying their honeymoon at a beautiful resort, eagerly getting to know each other more intimately and sharing their lives as husband and wife. But both of them harbored a secret that they were hesitant to reveal to one another. The husband sat on the edge of the bathtub in the bathroom, deep in thought. He worried, "How can I possibly tell my wife about my terribly smelly feet and my horrendously stinky socks? I've managed to hide it from her while we were dating, but she's bound to find out sooner or later. How should I break the news to her?" Meanwhile, the wife sat on the bed, lost in her own thoughts. She wondered, "How can I tell my husband about my awful bad breath? I've been incredibly lucky to keep it from him while we were courting. but it won't take long before he discovers the truth once we're living together. How can I tell him gently and without causing embarrassment? The husband, after much contemplation, finally mustered the courage to reveal his secret to his wife. He left the bathroom and walked into the bedroom with determination. Approaching the bed, he carefully climbed over to his wife, placed his arm around her, and moved his face very close to hers. So close that their nose is almost touched. "Darling," he whispered nervously, "I have a confession to make." His wife, relieved that he was opening up, responded gently, "So have I, my love." To which the husband, with a look of surprise, replied, "Don't tell me. You've eaten my socks." In school one day, the teacher decided that in science class she would teach about the elements. So she stood in the front of the class and said, "Children, if you could have one raw element in the world, what would it be?" Little Stevie raised his hand and said, "I would want gold, because gold is worth a lot of money and I could buy a Porsche." The teacher nodded and called on little Susie. Little Susie said, "I would want platinum, because platinum is worth more than gold and I could buy a Ferrari." The teacher smiled and then called on little Johnny. Little Johnny stood up and said, "I would want silicon." The teacher said, "Why, Johnny?" He responded by saying, "Because my mom has 2 bags of it and you should see all the sports cars outside our house." One day in the Garden of Eden, Eve calls out to God, "Lord, I have a problem." "What's the problem, Eve?" "Lord, I know you created me and all of this beautiful garden and all of these amazing animals and that hilarious comedic snake, but I'm just not happy." "Why is that, Eve?" came the reply from above. "Lord, I am lonely and I'm sick to death of apples." "Well, Eve, in that case, I have a solution. I shall create a man for you." "What's a man, Lord?" "Man will be a flawed creature with many wretched traits. He'll lie, cheat, and be vainglorious. All in all, he'll give you a hard time. But he'll be bigger, stronger, and will like to hunt and kill things. He will look silly when he's aroused, but since you've been complaining, I'll make him in such a way that he will satisfy your physical needs. He will be witless and will revel in childish things like fighting and kicking a ball about. He won't be too smart, so he'll also need your advice to think properly." "Sounds wonderful," says Eve, "but what's the catch, Lord?" "Well, you can have him on one condition." "What's that, Lord?" "As I said, he'll be proud, arrogant, and self-admiring. So you'll have to let him believe that I made him first. Just remember, it's our little secret. You know, woman to woman."
My friends, if you want to watch other funny jokes, subscribe to the channel.